Hi, I'm Colleen, and this is my reflection on my learning and becoming an ECS 210. Reflection, the bane of education students everywhere, which actually isn't such a bane to me anymore after 4 years of it. It's kind of grown on me, like a fungus. Anyway, in the beginning I thought this would be a very difficult assignment to do because really, who wants to write a final where they tell the prof, actually I already know most of what you taught me in this class. ECS 210 was far from my introduction to social justice and curriculum and the ways in which those two often conflict. All of my other ECS classes, 100, 110, 200, 300, and even ESI 302 covered those things to some extent, sometimes to a very large extent. So while I was, on the one hand, excited to take a class that explicitly discussed social justice and education, on the other hand, I had to wonder a bit why the ed program had been designed to be so repetitive. I know now that I was wrong about the program being needlessly repetitive, but I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. Another reason I initially found this class so easy was because most of my social justice education has actually taken place outside the university classroom. I've written multiple times about how my experiences as a queer student inform my practice as a university teacher, or as a teacher and a university student. In my first blog post, somebody commented to me, "Do you think common sense, if unnoticed, can lead to the introduction of oppressive practices in the classroom?" I replied, "I know it does. It already has. If it continues to go unnoticed, then the oppressive practices in place also continue." For example, queer students don't get appropriate sex ed, and girls get advised that home ec would be a better class choice for them than auto shop. True story. I addressed this part of my identity and curriculum again in my autobiography assignment, in part 2 of my curriculum's narrative and community assignment, and multiple times in class. There were definitely times when I got the impression that I was not the target student anticipated by the common sense of the curriculum of ECS 210, because in my experience, students who are not part of the dominant social group have had enough difficulty with the common sense of curricula at schools that they don't need to be taught that this common sense exists. In addition to that lived experience, I've also worked on educating myself outside of classes on other social justice issues like racism. Most of this learning took place on blogs and websites like Tumblr, and there's a link to my teacher Tumblr here in the sidebar. At the beginning of this semester, I decided that I would use my teacher Tumblr to tag and reblog all of the material posted on Tumblrs I follow that was relevant to what we were learning in ECS 210. I didn't have to go looking for any of the material found on my tagged ECS 210 page. It's just what happened to come across my dash in the space of these 3 months, and there's a lot of it. And not all of it is as gentle as the education being provided in ECS. Because what Kumashiro calls learning through crisis is what I knew as learning by reading posts written by people who are angry at the world, sometimes angry directly at me, who don't care about my feelings, and making myself sit and pay attention and get new knowledge from it on how to change myself and the way I do things without getting bogged down by guilt. So I thought I would find myself at the final faced with the prospect of saying, I didn't learn anything new. Wow, was I wrong. I didn't even realize how wrong I was until, ironically, I read this post on Tumblr. It's an open letter from a black woman to several white celebrities who've been recently doing very racist things in public. The second last line goes like this, and pardon my French, please. Last but not least, this is a shout out to white people who knows what I mean when I say fuck white people, but fuck you too, because I don't want you motherfuckers getting too comfortable and thinking that you can just idle sit by and watch your people fuck shit up. It's your job as well to fix the damage that's been done. Is that learning through crisis or what? And that was what brought about the biggest discomfort I've had in this class, which was the realization that I'd let myself coast through the first half of the semester while feeling superior to the people who were still struggling with this material, who were still learning how to learn through crisis. Because my lived curricula had included experiences as part of a non-dominant group, and because I'd already done some work on addressing my privileges, I let myself slip into believing that I already had all the necessary knowledge. And this was something that I coasted on even after reading Kumashiro's writing about the teacher that is always becoming, but never fully is. So yes, I came into this class already able to talk somebody's ear off about racism and sexism and homophobia and other social justice issues. And I could give some examples of the ways those things are reproduced in schools. But that's not enough. So what did I learn in this class that I initially thought was needlessly repetitive? I learned how to connect structural oppression to the concrete ways it's reproduced in schools. I learned more of the history of non-dominant oppressions that were not my own, oppressions of race, culture, and language. I gained some of the pedagogical tools needed to address the common sense that exists in my own ideas and practices. And maybe most importantly, I learned how to talk to other people about common sense curricula. From what was modeled by the profs in lectures and seminars, and from my own first-hand experience, I learned how to help somebody learn through the crisis of their white guilt, when you cannot tell them, fuck your white guilt, it's your job as well to fix the damage that's been done. I learned how the constant repetition of lessons is very, very important, because teaching something once and never reinforcing it will not get the job done, even for fellow third-year university students, apparently. I learned how sometimes you have to stop trying to reinforce a lesson because eventually it becomes harassment, and you cannot force a student to learn something that goes so hard against their common sense. Even if you think that common sense is harmful, and even if you think the lesson is a really important thing to learn. I learned a little bit about how to address common sense coming from my superiors as well as my peers, which was terrifying, by the way, speaking up like that. And all this, I think, is genuinely necessary learning. I'm glad that I had these experiences and that I had the opportunity to approach familiar content in a situation other than the internet blogs that I was used to, because learning with other people meant learning from other people. And now that I've said that all, 7 minutes of it, holy crap, I'm sorry, I have to sit here and tell you that despite everything I've learned in this course, my understanding of curriculum has not really changed. In the first class, when we were asked to generate a definition of curriculum, I thought for a few moments and then turned to the rest of my group and said something like, curriculum is everything that a person experiences and learns and is taught, both formally and informally, both by acceptance and by refusal of what they're told by the people and the systems around them that generate knowledge about the way things are and about what is true and what is false. Yes, I can come up with that definition off the top of my head. My group members stared at me for a few seconds and then proceeded to write down a definition that focused only on formal curriculum, so I shrugged, sat back, and waited for the prof to challenge that. Congratulations, University of Regina's education program. Your courses have all worked together very well to help me develop a very complex understanding of curriculum, even prior to this class. About the only thing I would say that has changed during this course is that I now include one more thing in my definition of curriculum. That formal curriculum works to erase informal curricula and to disguise itself as the only curriculum in existence, thereby helping the informal curriculum to go unexamined, unchallenged, and often unchanged. This effect is inherent in the formalizing and privileging of any one curriculum over others. There are other things that I might add to my original definition that I came into class believing, but that couldn't be mentioned in such a brief summary. For instance, curriculum is not inherently good or bad, curriculum is subject to constant change, and needs constant reinforcement to prevent change. The same curriculum can be beneficial to one person or harmful to another. Curriculum that oppresses one person can liberate another person by building that liberation on the backs of an oppressed group. It's partly what you make of it, partly what others make of it. It's collective and individual at the same time, and the collective part affects the individual part of it, and vice versa. All these things are true because when I say curriculum, I mean curricula, infinitely multiple. One single formal curriculum, for instance, is different for every single person who experiences it. So, it's been very difficult for me to write a final project that mostly does not focus on the question of what is curriculum, because I know that's not what the assignment asked for. But I believe that my most important learning in this course was about other things. So that's what I've chosen to focus on. So, here's to hoping that the conflict between this course's explicit curriculum and my received curriculum doesn't cost me too much in terms of percentage points.